There are a lot of questions surrounding genetically modified foods, but have you ever considered that they may have a correlation with food allergies? Gluten allergies have been steadily on the rise for over 2 decades. There has been exponential growth in allergies since the 1990s, and it would appear that GMOs could be a suspect. Despite this spike in gluten intolerance and popularization of the gluten-free diet, the general public does not seem to have a grasp on exactly what has changed over the years. Some even lack an understanding of what gluten is. Let us ask some individuals what their understanding of a gluten-free diet means.
All right, Ben, what do you know about gluten-free diets?
Not much. I know gluten's something that's in like wheat compounds, and that it like gives some people irritable bowels and otherwise.
Carolyn, what do you know about gluten-free diets?
I don't really know much about it. I do know that my uncle is on one because he has MS, and I know a lot of people usually go on it for having like a gluten allergy. That's about it.
Josh, what do you know about gluten-free diets?
Uh,
So when did people start using and modifying wheat? For thousands of years, humans have used wheat and grain to sustain their diets. The history of genetically modified wheat begins way back when people started farming. People could see that some stocks held onto the grain better. They also made the observation that some survived any disease they may have gone through the land. Naturally, these plants were harvested for their seeds and used the next year. This is a great example of artificial selection, which farmers have always done to improve their crops. Genetic modification is a natural process, but when the agribusiness began to monopolize the seed industries, farmers had little to no options but to buy these seeds. People started to modify wheat scientifically in 1997, mostly for economic gain through the reduction of lost product. They started off with two strains, one that is drought resistant and one that is pesticide resistant. These two strains were tested for any side effects and issues until 2003, at which point the developers, Monsanto, started to make deals with other agricultural companies and farmers to begin having them grow these strains in their fields. It started off with integrating these two different strains in with strains of wheat that hadn't been scientifically modified. Though it hasn't officially been FDA approved, they have been sold to different wheat farmers who are then selling it into the markets. The USDA is trying to find out the full details, but all we know is that GMO wheat is in circulation and seems to be causing problems. Food allergies are expensive. Economic cost of children's food allergies equals roughly $25 billion. The only treatment currently available is to choose an elimination diet. GMO wheat consumption has been associated with other issues such as gluten intolerances and irritable bowel syndrome. Gluten intolerant people commonly switch to a corn-based diet, but this has also been genetically modified to the point that it now causes intestinal issues. Roundup, a type of herbicide created by Monsanto in the 1990s, was studied by numerous academic groups. Eventually, the testing was ended due to lack of support. Roundup is a type of herbicide which kills unwanted vegetation that invades crops. While Roundup Ready crops are meant to resist the herbicides and their leading chemical compound, glyphosate, some individuals are wondering what side effects those chemicals have on the crop and those who consume them. Not only are GMO crops having a negative effect on human health, they are also damaging the land. This is because the chemicals in the seeds are released into the soil as they grow, suffocating the land. This causes more work for the farmers because they have to rotate plots each year. How does this affect the environment? The chemicals that come from GMOs are accumulating into the cells of the plants and the pollen, which essentially kills the bee populations. This is because of the levels of toxins. It is also depleting the nutrients in the soil and causing less biodiversity, which is bad for the environment. This is causing an increase in invasive species because plants that are genetically modified are hardier, so they're taking over vast areas of land, which kills insects that are essential to the environment. How does this affect society? In our society, we live for getting the most product while still paying minimal prices. But do the low costs outweigh the benefits or lack thereof? While we may be paying less for a product, we are paying high prices with our health and medical bills. Monsanto argues that their products have no negative health effects. Some crops already use Roundup. These include soy, canola, corn, alfalfa, cotton, and cereal grains. But even though they claim to be risk-free, others claim differently. In the spring of 2015, the World Health Organization claimed that Roundup was probably carcinogenic. Not only is this alarming, but it also leads most to the question of other health effects. Certainly one of the most highly discussed health concerns lately is gluten intolerance. How does modified wheat correlate with gluten allergies? According to a study conducted at MIT, glyphosate has caused many health issues in both humans and animals. These include digestive issues, celiac disease, and a higher risk of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. What are we doing to regulate these changes? The regulations that are set in place regarding GMO crops appear to be few and far between. The FDA has the ability to regulate the modifications made to the foods we eat. They also have the ability to stop productions of modified foods that stray too far from the original product. The FDA does take initiative to regulate the overall safety of foods. However, some of our findings have shown that the FDA seems to have conflicting arguments over the existence of GMOs in our products. Some sources say they aren't legal or integrated into our food supply. Others say that these GMOs have been affecting us since the early 2000s, or possibly even earlier, without being properly studied. The European Union has a much different approach with much less ambiguity. They clearly lay out the rules for GMOs and are open about their existence and regulations, stating the GMO legislation lays down specific procedures for assessing and authorizing GMOs that are time-limited and transparent. The risk assessment is performed on the basis of harmonized criteria, which are recognized as being amongst the most stringent in the world. So why does the US seem to have such confusing and conflicting findings? We think that in order to get around this issue and better our community's health, economic stability, and environment, we need to make laws that are like the European Union's and are more straightforward and create less room for error. Thanks for watching!